When was the last time you logged onto Destiny 2 and said, let's go do some Nessus bounties? Yeah, me neither. Planets and destinations have been an integral part of the Destiny franchise since its inception. That first time wandering about in the Cosmodrome as a new light was utterly fantastic and really helped to capture your imagination about Destiny's worlds. With some of the most beautiful scenery across the entire gaming industry, there are times when I just want to load up a destination and take in those amazing skyboxes. Destiny's art direction and world design is second to no one. But unfortunately, despite how gorgeous Destiny's worlds are, there is almost no reason to visit at all, other than to take in the sights. Free roam on D2's worlds was once praised as one of the only positive changes in the transition from Destiny 1 to Destiny 2. With the addition of planetary vendors with their own unique weapons and armor, as well as mini dungeons that Bungie dubbed Lost Sectors, there was a ton going for D2's destinations back at the game's launch in 2017. Not to mention the fact that they added fast travel nodes, as well as public events that were clearly marked on the map, which were amazing quality of life changes. Bungie stumbled greatly in the transition to Destiny 2, but destinations were not one of those fumbles. However, since the game's launch over 3 years ago, there has been next to zero innovation when it comes to destination design. Sure, the Moon and Europa offer repeatable quests to target farm weapons and armor, and Bungie has added Legend and Master Lost sectors, but that's it. Our older destinations are basically frozen in 2017 time. I mean, for goodness sakes, Devrim Kay sells Sunset Year 1 statically rolled weapons in the year 2021. It is clear that D2's destinations are in dire need of a facelift to bring them into the modern day. In this video, I'm going to explain how destinations can evolve and once again be a fundamental staple of the game. We're going to discuss short-term solutions that can be implemented to bring destinations to modern-day relevance, and we will then discuss how we can shake up our destinations on a week-to-week basis, giving the player more reasons to venture into these beautiful worlds each and every week. Let's jump in. So, let's get right down to business. The first thing I want to talk about is what can be done in the short term to make visiting destinations both a deeper experience and also a more rewarding one. These will be ideas that seek to maximize player enjoyment while also looking to minimize the amount of work for the developers. Fortunately, there are a ton of systems and old gear sets left gathering dust that could be put to much better use. The first thing that destinations need is loot that is relevant to the modern game. Right now, if you go to Nessus, not only is Failsafe offering a Sunset Year 1 statically rolled weapon, but she is also selling an entire set of Sunset armor. Bungie is sitting on a literal treasure trove of old planetary weapons and armor from Year 1 that were never updated with random rolls. Imagine heading to the EDZ and being able to acquire randomly rolled versions of Scadelock or Lincoln Green, or even Bad News, especially considering how good 120 hand cannons are these days. Bungie could revitalize all of our destinations practically overnight by reintroducing old planetary gear with random rolls in a season of the Chosen tag. No new assets need to be created, just tag and bag the stuff that is already made and has been sitting unused for years. With refreshed gear on our destinations, we also need to implement modern loot systems to chase and acquire this newly refreshed bread. I propose a rework of the planetary vendors, taking advantage of good features and lessons learned from other vendors and loot systems that we've had throughout the game's life. So, let me walk you through how this all would work. First off, planetary vendors would no longer accept planetary materials in exchange for a piece of gear. Instead, they would now have a planetary seasonal reputation rank that can be increased in a number of ways, such as completing patrols, public events, lost sectors, adventures, killing high-value targets, and so much more. Basically, anything that you do on a planet will go towards increasing your reputation there. At each reputation rank, the player would earn a random weapon or armor piece from that destination, in a similar fashion to the reward structure from ranking up your infamy or valor. This reputation rank would reset every season, kind of like how glory works in the competitive playlist. Each destination would have its own reputation rank, giving the player a wide variety of weapons and armor to chase each and every season, making the game's gear grind feel that much deeper. The second change to planetary vendors that I'd implement is the addition of a repeatable bounty, letting the player continually grind out XP and planetary reputation to their heart's content. We already have repeatable bounties available on the Moon and Europa, and it's high time that this functionality is spread to all the other destinations. The next change to planetary vendors that I'd implement would be the inclusion of a set of reputation rewards that the player can earn each season. Think of it as the planetary version of the reputation rewards that you can earn from increasing your valor or infamy. These reputation rewards would be pretty potent, with 6 prisms, 500 planetary mats, an exotic engram, and an ascendant shard available on every planet every season. However, since there are 7 total destinations, which is kind of a lot, you would not be able to manually reset your reputation rank for a destination like you do with infamy or valor. Instead, everyone's planetary reputation ranks automatically reset at the end of each season. Now, the next change to planetary vendors that I'd implement would be the inclusion of a set of featured weapons and armor with a fixed role for that season. Since sunsetting has been sunset, Bungie no longer has to constantly replace loot sources on a yearly cadence. Instead, once Bungie refreshes planetary gear with random rolls in a Season 13 tag, then they could simply change the perks on these weapons each season and call it a day. Historically, Destiny players have loved vendors with rotating stock. Look no further than the mass appeal of the tower vendors changing the perk rolls on the gear they sold every week from Age of Triumph onwards. I mean, there is a reason that the meme regarding Dead Orbit selling a Godroll Scout Rifle this week exists to this very day. This is one of the few things that I think has unanimous appeal in the Destiny community, and considering how big and how diverse that community is, that is no small feat and should not be neglected. Anyways, I would tie the ability to purchase these featured weapons and armor, as well as the reputation rewards, to your planetary reputation rank. So I'll walk you through an example if we were in the EDZ. At rank 0, the only things that would be available to you would be the selection of bounties to get your rep up. At rank 5, the player would earn 7 Masterwork cores and be able to purchase a statically rolled weapon, as well as a statically rolled class item. At rank 10, the player would earn 5 upgrade modules and be able to purchase a second planetary weapon and a pair of boots. At rank 15, the player would earn 3 enhancement prisms and be able to purchase a third weapon and a chest piece. At rank 20, the player would earn a whopping 500 planetary mats and be able to purchase a 4th weapon and some gauntlets. At rank 25, the player would earn 3 more enhancement prisms and be able to purchase a 5th weapon as well as a helmet. At rank 30, the player would earn an exotic engram and be able to purchase a 6th statically rolled weapon. And finally, at rank 35, the player would earn an Ascendant Shard and be able to purchase a 7th statically rolled weapon from that destination. And last but not least, the vendor progression that I just broke down for you was just the EDZ. Imagine having a seasonal progression available to pursue on all 7 destinations. Imagine heading off to Nessus to snag a sweet Amalon sniper like the Morning Comes, or venturing off to the Tangled Shore to earn new roles on old favorites like Dustrock Blues. Perhaps you're someone like me that still loves the Dreaming City above all the other destinations. Well, now you'd be able to head on back to the most beautiful world I've ever experienced in gaming and bang out some god rolls on Waking Vigil or Retold Tale. Hell, with this new system, even Mr. Fortnite himself, good old Shah Han, could become relevant if you stuck an updated version of Duke with him in the Cosmodrome. And while the Moon and Europa are more up to date than all the other destinations, it'd still be fantastic to see this new planetary structure applied to these worlds as well. And with all these improvements to the base destination experience, let's turn our eyes to spicing up the planets on a week-to-week basis. Now that we've made the base experience on our destinations better, let's discuss how we can make destinations as a whole more interesting week over week. Prior to Beyond Light, there was a feature in-game that attempted to fulfill this premise. I am talking about the old weekly Flashpoint. The weekly Flashpoint allowed the player to earn a powerful reward for their seasonal power level grind. The Flashpoint was a simple challenge that required the player to complete public events with bonus progress for heroic completions, clear lost sectors, and complete adventures. The Flashpoint was also the only planet, other than Mars and Mercury, that featured heroic adventures, with one adventure on the Flashpoint planet being upgraded to heroic each day. Other than the daily featured heroic adventure, the only other change that the Flashpoint brought to that destination was that during public events, a few extra special enemies would spawn, and killing them would grant the player a few extra planetary materials and some bonus Flashpoint progress. However, Bungie ended up doing less and less with the Flashpoint over the years, and eventually retired it when Beyond Light launched. What I'm proposing would be a resurrection of the weekly Flashpoint, but with a host of updates, and would tie into Bungie's ongoing philosophy with Destiny 2, a single evolving world. What I'm going to suggest would feature evolving worlds, and would make for not just an excellent gameplay and loot incentive, but would tie in beautifully to the lore and the current status of the Sol system. So, first off, one destination each week would be invaded by one of the pyramid ships. This invading pyramid ship would be there in an attempt to suck the planet into a darkness anomaly, just like what happened to all of the other destinations that were consumed by the darkness. Thus, I would dub the return of the Flashpoint as the weekly Darkness Flashpoint, and the stakes couldn't be higher, as your efforts on the weekly affected destination are essentially all-out war against the pyramid ships to stop them from completely annihilating the Sol system. Now that we've established the why behind the weekly Darkness Flashpoint, let's dive right in and talk about what this would mean for the destination under siege for the week, both gameplay-wise as well as loot and progression-wise. For that week, the Darkness Engulfed planet will have double reputation gains, similar to how the Crucible and Gambit have double Valor and Infamy weeks. Perhaps even tune the planetary reputation gain up to triple starting on Friday at reset, like how Crucible scales up Valor gains during Iron Banner weeks. This would establish the weekly Darkness Flashpoint as another in-game event to push engagement and get players excited about the weekly Darkness Flashpoint going to their favorite destination. Additionally, when the weekly Darkness Flashpoint is up, that destination will offer a pinnacle power reward available from that destination's vendor for earning a set amount of planetary reputation. This would help to make the power leveling process feel less stale, as you'd be headed to a different location each week and engaging with different environments and enemies each time. Now, let's talk about how gameplay on the Darkness Engulfed planet will change when the weekly Darkness Flashpoint is active. For that week, the affected destination will have a soft form of the contest modifier turned on. Bungie is already starting to use the contest modifier more frequently in activities outside of GMs or Day 1 raids. Look no further than the normal mode version of the Presage mission. See those Screebs that are really tanky even though you're way over-leveled? Bungie is enforcing a version of the contest modifier there. It's unclear if the Presage contest modifier is a -10 or a -20 power differential, but regardless, it shows that Bungie is looking to make combat more difficult in more areas of the game. I think that for the weekly Darkness Flashpoint, that planet should have this contest modifier applied to make the world feel more dangerous and like something has actually changed. It would make that destination feel more endgame and more threatening, with the promise of additional spoils of war for taking on this increased difficulty. Since we're on the topic of gameplay changes, I think that the darkness engulfed planet should have all HVTs replaced with champions, in order to make the world feel even more threatening and different. I wouldn't just up the difficulty with no reward payoff though. Oh no. While the Darkness Flashpoint is active, each defeated champion HVT would drop a piece of that planet's gear, similar to how the HVTs on Europa drop a piece of Europa gear when they are defeated. The next gameplay change I'd make to the Darkness Engulfed planet would be the addition of world bosses, which can spawn in place of a public event. These world bosses would be similar to the old Taken bosses that roamed in the Destiny 1 planets as part of the ongoing Taken war plot. These world bosses would also spawn an increased amount of enemies compared to usual when they are up. Basically, enemies are moving against each other on steroids to really make it feel like an active war zone. A great example of what this would be like can be seen back in Destiny 1. Remember Urzok the Hated? He was a special high-value target that spawned into the Skywatch of the Cosmodrome, and he not only packed a punch in his own attacks, but he also had an absurd amount of health. Rarely, you could get Urzok to spawn at the same time that the enemies are moving against each other, sub-event would start. What this led to was an all-out war zone with tons of enemies everywhere, with a very tanky and a very scary boss moving amongst the rabble. Imagine making this rare occurrence into a feature of the weekly Darkness Flashpoint in Destiny 2. Everyone has been raving about how much fun the increased enemy density is in the remastered Devil's Lair Strike. Let's bring this fan favorite feature to our destinations as well. And just like with the champion HVTs, there would be a great loot incentive to match the increased difficulty of a world boss taking the place of a public event. Defeating a world boss will drop both a planetary weapon and a planetary armor piece, and would award a large chunk of planetary reputation, making it always worth your time to drop whatever you might be doing and join the fray. In addition to adding world bosses, I would make it such that the player would earn a random piece of planetary gear for their first public event clear of the day and their first Lost Sector clear of the day when the Darkness Flashpoint is up. Europa already has a variation of this, as your first Lost Sector completion in the Eclipsed Zone per day will award a piece of Europa gear. Continuing with the trend of evolving worlds, while the weekly Darkness Flashpoint is active, that planet will be the home of the Legend and Master Lost Sectors, expanding this feature outward from just Europa and the Moon. This would make the location of the Legend and Master Lost Sectors a lot more logical and simple. The weekly Darkness Flashpoint planet is where you go to do the high-tier Lost Sectors. Basically, one planet out of the 7 becomes the endgame destination for that week. And as part of the push to make the weekly Darkness Flashpoint change up the player experience each week, I would add a Heroic Adventures playlist to the Darkness-affected planet. This Heroic Adventures playlist would have matchmaking and would be very similar to the Strike playlist. Bungie could even bring back the old Mercury Heroic Adventure modifiers to really shake things up and make the gameplay more dynamic. This would basically be the Heroic Strikes playlist of each planet, adding yet another reason to engage each week. For planets without adventures, this playlist would consist of old campaign missions instead. For the Cosmodrome, maybe it just wouldn't have this particular feature since that destination is pretty damn bare bones. Anyways, this Heroic Adventures playlist would award planetary reputation for each Heroic Adventure completion, as well as some planetary materials. You would also have a chance to obtain a piece of planetary gear after each Heroic Adventure completion, with some bad luck protection included to make sure you get at least one drop every 5 or 6 Heroic Adventure completions. And the final feature that I would implement with the weekly Darkness Flashpoint would be the ability for the player to target farm that planet's gear in a similar fashion to how Varix lets you target farm Europa gear at any time, so long as you have Here Always pieces to purchase a weapon quest. Europa and the Moon allow target farming at all times because they have special currencies that limit the amount of farming that you can do in order to extend the grind. For the other 5 destinations, in order to limit the amount of currencies floating around, I would only allow target farming on the week of the Darkness Flashpoint. But I would make the currency to acquire these weapon quests simply be the planetary resources that we already use today. And lastly, since seasons are usually only 13 weeks long and we have 7 destinations in the game, that would mean that not every planet would get 2 rotations of the weekly Darkness Flashpoint in a given season. To remedy this, I would have the final week of each season have all planets be weekly Darkness Flashpoints, similar to how Bungie has all 6 Grandmaster Nightfalls up the final week of the season. This would make the final week of each season a true event for PvE players, with all the Nightfalls and all the Darkness Flashpoints up at the same time. And this would ensure that all destinations have at least 2 Darkness Flashpoints per season. And just like that, we've come to the end of another video. Hopefully you guys all enjoyed this latest installment and how we can continue to evolve Destiny 2. D2's planets and destinations are some of the most visually striking vistas across all of gaming. With the suggestions and ideas that I've pitched in this video, we'd be able to turn these works of art into buzzing centers of player activity and engagement, and would serve to make the game deeper as opposed to just wider. Lots of games fall into the trap of a mile wide but an inch deep. Destiny 2 is coming dangerously close to this trap when it comes to destinations. But I believe that Bungie will continue refining Destiny 2, and based on the most recent TWAB, it appears that at least some people at Bungie have seen our videos. Look at the changes that they're making to the Glacial Quake Super. The damage resist numbers are the exact same that we pitched 2 months ago in our balancing stasis video, and the freezing shockwave on cast no longer affecting players but still affecting PvE combatants is yet another word-for-word replication of what we once suggested here. Not only are the changes to stasis coming incredibly healthy for the game, but it demonstrates to me that the videos I make and the support that you guys show for them absolutely is making a difference. Thank you guys. I am already pumped to get working on my next video. For next week's video, I've got some ideas floating around in my head, but please let me know down in the comments what you would like to see me cover next. Originally, I was going to do a Raids 2.0 video this week, but upon seeing your suggestions to do a Planets 2.0 instead, I changed course. And I'm really happy I did, as I had a lot of fun crafting this video, and I think it turned out really well. I've said it before, I don't respond to every comment, but I absolutely do read them all. Your feedback is super valuable to me, so please keep giving it. And with all that said, that'll do it from me. As always, if you want to support this channel, make sure to leave a comment down below, drop a like, and hit that sub button. Have a fantastic week, guys, and I hope to catch you all in the next one. This has been your host, Kujay. Cheers.